So the topic for today that we wanted to talk about is giving credit where credit is due. So this topic is very, very important, and it's something that we've seen a lot ever since we started doing lettering, ever since we started posting on Instagram, and so this topic has always been present, and the reason that we're bringing it up now is just because we saw some discussions in the group about it, and we wanted to have a more productive way of talking about this and have a discussion about it and talk about it in a way that we can kind of give you some resources and ideas of how to proceed if something like this happens to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is definitely an important topic, and I know depending on what side of the argument or whatever you are on, it can be a very emotional topic, and people get really riled up about it. So we don't want this to feel like you need to be defensive as we're having this conversation. We also want to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. We've been thinking about this a lot, and we've been talking about it a lot, but this certainly isn't legal advice, but it's also not the only right way to approach this. Mm-hmm. So if you have another idea, feel free to put it in the comments. We're also going to leave some links to some other articles and other blog posts about this topic as well. But we wanted to approach this in kind of a, as friends, these are some things that you should think about rather than attacking anyone or blaming anyone or saying you're right, you're wrong. It's just more of how to think about this moving forward. Mm-hmm. So how should we start? So maybe just first kind of stepping back and giving some non-lettering examples just to start with, because it's kind of confusing in the world of Instagram, understanding how to put it in a real world context. So we all grow up in school learning that you're not supposed to plagiarize and you're not supposed to just copy someone's work, but you can use other references as long as you cite them properly, but you can't just copy and paste someone's work and say that it's your own. So that's pretty obvious for words, if you're copying text, but for art it can be a little different because you can use other people's work for inspiration, and at what point does it become copying? So something that I wanted to use as an example, if you think of Instagram as a big art gallery, so now think of every post on Instagram as just a picture in an art gallery, and say that you are in this art show looking around, and then you see someone else's work and you just sit in front of it and paint the exact same thing, copy it exactly, and then hang it on the wall and say it's yours. Now, if someone else was at this same art show and was walking around and looking and saw the original work and then saw yours, they might be kind of confused, why are these the same? Who made it first? Which one's the original? And you probably wouldn't do that in a real life situation. If you did get inspiration from someone else and then hung it up as your own, you would probably say something like, this was inspired by the work of this other person. So now if you think about that in terms of Instagram, if you see someone else's work and you're inspired by it, that's totally fine to be inspired by it. It's okay to use someone else's work for inspiration, and it's okay to use it as a learning tool. Mm-hmm. And to I keep trying to think of a word besides copy, but you can copy their work, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to be proud of your result, but it's not okay to then pass it off as your own and share it and not give credit to the original artist. Yeah, in fact, looking at someone else's work and studying it, and again, not to say copy, but recreating it is a fantastic way to learn. Like she said, it's a learning tool. In fact, I believe lots of art schools use, or even music. If you think of you're trying to learn music, you're probably not going to start composing all your own songs right away. You need to kind of learn based on what people have done in the past and learn how they've done it, learn what works, learn what kind of techniques, but you would never pass off a song that someone else wrote as your own. So there's some black and white area here, but there's also kind of a lot of gray area. I think before we go into a lot of detail into different scenarios, some things to remember are to be kind to one another. I don't know, maybe we should wait till the end. Most people, if they're copying your work or doing something that you feel like your work is being copied off of, chances are they probably just didn't realize, or it's an honest mistake, and getting really angry, that would be my first reaction, would to be get mad, but it's important to kind of calm down for a second and maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and reach out to them and explain the situation before getting really angry. But yeah, So now let's give some kind of more specific examples of what is copying, how do you know if you're doing it, like just some examples. So I want to start by talking about some categories that are more specific to lettering related. So you could be copying someone's design, like a specific, like I wrote this word, so I saw someone write this word this way, and then I just wrote it the exact same way and don't change it at all. So that would be like the design that you're imitating. You could be using someone else's technique as an example. So the way that someone did something like ribbon lettering. So you're not writing the same exact word, but you're using their technique, or a teaching method. So I'm going to give an example for each. So I'm going to give positive examples of people doing it the right way.
Yeah, because we have seen lots and lots of positive examples of this, and I would say like 9 times out of 10 I do see people crediting, and it's really great. It's just when that doesn't happen is when it becomes a problem. So
yeah, so for each of those 3 examples, design. So a lot of you guys have seen the no lift majuscules, which was a challenge that was last year about making the majuscule alphabet without lifting your pen. And so I participated in that, and I had a lot of fun with it. I spent a lot of time creating each design for each letter, and then I put it all together in like a video that showed all the letters and a worksheet and everything. And I've seen a lot of you guys using those designs, and you're doing an awesome job, and you are almost always saying like, I was inspired by Jordan's no lift majuscules, or you're not like just writing it and saying, I came up with this, I made this. Or if someone asks about it, you give credit and say like, yeah, I saw this video and that's how I learned it. So that's good. Another example is a technique. So everyone is amazed always by Tom's awesome stippling and his layouts and everything. And I frequently see people trying it out and posting in the group and saying, Tom, look at this, I tried out your technique. And giving him credit and telling other people like, I was inspired by Tom. So that's a good way of doing it. And then lastly, a teaching method. So for instance, if you learned something from us, like something in our bounce lettering course or flourishing course or a free lesson that we gave, and let's say you're in another Facebook group, because there are lots and lots of Facebook groups about lettering, and let's say you see someone ask a question about bounce lettering, and let's say you took our bounce lettering course and you're able to answer their question, and you say like, oh, I learned this, like, here's the answer to the question, I learned it from Loveleigh Loop's class. That's awesome. You're helping them out, but you're also not pretending like you came up with that on your own if it's something that you learned from us. So those are just kind of 3 examples of different things that you could be considered copying: a design, a technique, or a teaching method.
And we'll give more examples of how to credit people, but this goes for all platforms. So Instagram, Facebook groups, even if your accounts are private or you're just posting on your personal page, it's still really important that you credit other people's work.
Or even like a physical thing, like if you saw a picture of something online and then you create it physically and give it to someone, that you still should be giving credit if you're using someone else's work. Okay, so should we give some more specific scenarios of like kind of what to do if you find yourself in this situation?
Yeah. Okay, we just have some notes which is what we're looking at, because we know that there's like a lot going on with this topic. And again, if you have any comments or anything, put them in the comments. We'll have to make sure we're seeing all of them too. Okay, so in this scenario, let's say you upload a picture to Instagram that you're really proud of something that you wrote, and then someone reposts that picture on their account and they don't give you credit. So if you saw that, I bet you would feel really upset, because you probably spent a lot of time making it and taking a picture of it and writing a caption, and then someone just takes it and puts it on their own Instagram account without even tagging you, without even putting your name in the comments, nothing. I'm sure you would feel really, really upset about that. Or it could be that they put it on a blog or on Facebook. It doesn't have to be that they just reposted it on Instagram. Okay, so what should you do? So, that's pretty like black and white if someone just takes your work and posts it somewhere else.
Takes a screenshot of it, like exactly what you posted, and reposts it without saying that it was yours.
So that's like black and white, like they definitely should not have reposted your work without your permission. So what should you do? Well, you should message them privately. I don't ever think that posting publicly on their picture and saying, hey, you copied this, is the first step that should be taken. So message them privately, explain to them.
Well, actually, the first step before that is to just calm down for a second.
Yeah.
You want to just take a deep breath, and I know it's emotional and you're probably mad, but before sending an angry message, just take a second, take a deep breath. Then
maybe they didn't realize that they shouldn't have done this, so don't get defensive right away. So send them a private message, explain to them, hey, I saw that you posted a picture that I created without giving me any credit. Could you please, and then you can decide what you want them to do. You can ask them to take it down if you want. You can ask them to tag you in it, to put a link to their website, whatever you would like the action to be taken. And probably 95% of the time they're going to say, oh, I'm so sorry, like I didn't realize, and they'll do whatever you say.
If you ask them politely. If you send an angry message
or like post like, look at what this person did, that's probably not the best way to go about it, and then the person is probably more likely to get defensive. And again, these are just our recommendations. This has happened to us before, and we've messaged people like, hey, just wanted to let you know that we spent a lot of time creating this and was wondering if you could put a link to our website so that if someone is interested in this type of work, first of all, they understand that who the original creator was. Because like one big thing is if you post something, then it's kind of, and you don't give credit to someone, then it's implied that you created it. And so if you didn't actually create it, then that's just not very ethical. Okay, so that's a pretty black and white. Like if someone takes your work, posts it somewhere else, then there's really no reason that they shouldn't credit you. Okay, let's do another scenario.
Okay, so let's say you're scrolling through Instagram and you see a picture that looks kind of familiar and you're like, hey, wait a second, I made this a few days ago and now I'm seeing someone else make it. They copied me. So you look at it and you see something, whether it's the design or the technique, and you come to the conclusion that they copied you. So before you come to that conclusion, again, take a minute to calm down. And then a couple things to check first. It could be that they found the inspiration for this elsewhere, and
it could even be that you were inspired by something and they were inspired by the same thing, and you just happened to both create it at the same time. I know there's some like book on how that happens a lot, like with Big Magic or whatever. So check the timestamp of the picture and see if they did post it after you did, and kind of check their profile. If they've been posting similar things to that before, then it's probably reasonable that they could have created that without having copied you.
Yeah, like, do you want to give the ribbon lettering?
Oh yeah, so like you guys know that I just did that ribbon lettering tutorial, and like I've seen that style around. Like we actually used to do it all the time from that American Girl book when we were young. Like, but I didn't just like look at someone else's alphabet and copied it. I like got out a ribbon and like actually spent like 5 hours trying to figure out how it looks best and how to teach it. And then the next day, and tons of you guys posted pictures and like tagged us, and it was awesome because I loved seeing it. And then I saw someone post a ribbon lettering thing and didn't tag me, and I was like why wouldn't they tag me? But then I looked at their page and they had actually been doing it like for a long time, and so like I wasn't, even if they did learn it from me, like just looking at their page and seeing, oh, they actually have been doing this, like, it's not like I came up with ribbon lettering, then I wasn't, but if my immediate reaction was to send them a nasty message of like, hey, like, you copied this, like, you should have given me credit, then that would have been overreacting on my part, and just not a very nice thing to do. So, it's always a good idea just to check and make sure, like, now if I did see someone turn around and teach the exact same ribbon lettering tutorial that I gave using, like, the exact same wording and like everything, then that would not be nice. Okay, sorry, we see
What about the script styles that are on websites for purchase? If you learn someone else's alphabet, do you need to credit them in a post? So maybe like if you're looking at a font for an inspiration. Oh, Kelly, that's a good question. We'll talk about that in a second. So I think it's okay to use someone else's alphabet for inspiration, like how to, I don't know, maybe an idea of the style. The problem comes in when you're like exactly copying it. So
like tracing
it, or even just like not, if you look at it and then you just recreate it without having any creative thought process go on to make it your own, then I don't know, I guess another way of looking at it, and this is kind of for any of these scenarios, like if you made that alphabet style and then you saw a bunch of people using it without giving you credit, how would you feel? So if you're exactly copying it, and if you put yourself in their shoes and you think, oh, maybe I would feel like I'm being copied, then maybe it would be a good idea to give credit. I guess there's kind of a difference too of like how you'd plan on using it. Like we're pretty big advocates of like when we have our workshops, we say like you can trace
like our alphabets, because that helps you get the muscle memory down and kind of learn the technique, like kind of how we talked about before. You can study what the masters do, not that we're masters, but like study what someone else has done to like kind of learn the basics, and then pick out things that you like about that style and draw from lots of sources of inspiration. Yeah. So if you were to take a font style and then like hand letter something that was basically copying the font and then selling that on Etsy, that would be copyright infringement. So it wouldn't even matter if you gave them credit, because you'd have to ask them permission first anyway.
Kind of like for our font, we have 2 licenses. One is just personal use, and then there's a commercial license that is if you are using it on products that you are selling, so that's a completely different license. So
yeah, and that's where like another gray area thing that we kind of alluded to of like, well, what are you using it for? Like there's some people who teach lettering, there's some people who just do it for fun, there's some people who like just like to participate in the lettering challenges on Instagram. So there is a lot of gray area here. Do we want to talk about Kelly's question or come back to that later?
Kelly said, I like to use pictures to letter on Procreate. I use them from free sites like Unsplash. I like to Google images. Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't know if I have the right answer.
I would say, first of all, like Unsplash, I know for sure Unsplash, I'm not exactly sure because I've never used Pixabay, is that what it is? Pixabay? Yeah. For Unsplash, that website is specifically meant for photographers who have given permission for you to use their photos however you want, and you don't have to give them credit. Now, it does say, like, when you download the picture, like, hey, like, you don't have to credit this, but it helps us, like, it helps the original creator gain exposure, and it's kind of just a nice little way to give back to them because you, like, didn't have to buy their picture. So as often as we can, I like to credit them. It kind of depends on, like, what we're using it for.
But if you're getting it from Google Images is not a source. So if you search, like, I don't know, wine bottle, and you find Google Images and you screenshot it or save the image or whatever, and then say, I got this from Google Images, that is not a source, that's a search engine. So you would have to go and click on the picture and see where the original website was, and then, first of all, check and make sure that there's no copyright rules for that picture, because on the website it might say, like, you're not allowed to use this picture for anything.
Then I would probably ask permission first.
Yeah, or at least, I mean, at least giving credit if it's like a blog or a website, you could see like if they have an Instagram account and then tagging them in it or something.
Or maybe they got the picture from a site like Unsplash, and then you could go back to that original site.
Yeah.
That's why, like, for this part, like, we're not giving actual legal advice because there are certain, like, laws that you might be breaking. But I think in general, crediting and making sure you're not using copyrighted images, and when in doubt, just go with a site like Unsplash where it's...
Yeah, like Nancy just said, I would use a reputable site like Jillian said. My husband is a photographer and he has had photos stolen and used in ads for products. Yeah, that is not right. So you wouldn't want to be the one doing that. So I guess it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our next...
Okay, so did we ever finish... So for the scenario about, like, well, this looks familiar, I feel like maybe they're copying me, so before commenting publicly or even sending them a message first, just take a second, calm down. I know how angry you can get when you think someone's copying your work. I've felt it too. So calm down, then check their page to make sure, like, first of all, that they actually posted it after you posted, because if they posted a picture before you posted it, then they obviously couldn't have copied you.
Yeah, and they might think that you're copying them.
Yeah. Secondly, look back at their old work, and if they've done like that style before, then their chances are they're probably not copying you. If you really believe that they have copied you, like maybe you can tell that they're following you and that they posted it right after you and that it's like
exactly
pretty obviously the same thing, then that's where you would send them a private message them privately,
and politely
explain what you believe happened, that maybe they saw your design and then they replicated it, and ask them to do whatever you think you'd like them to do. I think tagging and giving you credit would be a better option. Well, depends on what you want, but versus taking it down, because then you kind of have more exposure to the thing that you created, but that's up to you to decide. And again, 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, people will do what you ask, that it was an honest mistake, like there's no need to overreact. If they refuse to take it down, that's where you can maybe report it to Instagram, or I guess it depends on what site you see it on.
But then you also sometimes have to ask yourself if it's worth going through all this trouble and everything, I mean, you always want to get credit where credit's due, but if it's going to take hours and hours of your time and cause you all this emotional stress, like, is it really worth it after you send a few requests? You don't want to make yourself look bad either. Like, you wouldn't want to go posting this on your Instagram story, bashing the other person and saying, like, I can't believe they stole my work, all this stuff, because that kind of reflects poorly on you. So,
I know there's a balance, and I know you can get really angry when that happens, but I just giving people the benefit of the doubt, being a kind human, knowing that at the end of the day we all just want to be creative and do lettering, but we also want to like feel safe posting our work and have credit for our work.
Yeah, and also thinking about like how you would like interact with someone in person. Like if she posted something and copied me on Instagram, I might send this mean message, but in real life I'm not going to be like, you copied that. Well, maybe to you. But
yeah, pretend everyone's your friend. Oh, actually, okay, so here's a quote from Jessica Hish, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And we'll put links to these websites, but she said, she's a designer and does a lot of typography and hand lettering. She said, whenever I'm alerted of a possible rip-offer copier, I try my best to educate rather than chastise and gently nudge them to find their own voice. So I think that's a pretty good summary of what to do.
Yep.
Okay.
So the next scenario is the tables have turned and now you are the one copying someone else. Okay. Or using someone else's work for inspiration. So
and again, this is not like you're allowed to look at other, you don't have to create in a silo. Like it is pretty hard to reinvent the wheel like for every single thing you create, but there are some things to keep in mind.
So going back to what we were talking about before, using this technique that Tom has been showing us. So let's say you try to recreate something using his technique, clearly inspired by his work. So instead of just like doing it and posting a picture of it and passing it off as your own if it's like directly influenced by him, some ways that you can give credit are by saying something like, I was inspired by this person's work, and then whatever else you want to say about it. Or I saw a tutorial by this person and wanted to try it out, and here's my attempt. Or,
but like actually tagging their handle, not just saying like by Tom's tutorial, because the point of crediting is not just to say like this was inspired by someone, but also so that the person who originally created it can see it. Just like it's kind of cool to see when someone else has created something that you've taught them, but also in case someone following you is interested in more of that type of work, maybe they'll be able to go follow Tom, and it's just kind of a rising tide lifts all boats thing.
Yeah. And I would do more than, and this goes back to Instagram, rather than just tag them in the photo, I would actually type out something in the caption and like put their Instagram name in the caption. Okay?
Okay, so how do you know that you're copying, and like at what point did you learn something from someone, and then like when do you have to stop giving them credit if you've kind of mastered the style on your own? So this is kind of, again, a gray area, but here are some things to think about. So if you can't create a piece without constantly looking back at the tutorial or like Tom's picture or like our YouTube video, like you have to be looking at it while you're creating it. Maybe you do a couple drafts and
or like
still,
worksheets.
Yeah, or are like tracing something or comparing something. Like that is pretty clearly what? Copying? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying no.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't say anything.
Like it's not that grave an area.
I was waiting for the punchline.
So that's pretty clearly like you're taking someone else's work and it's not something that you invented, and so you shouldn't be passing it off as just your own. So not only is it just kind of the right thing to do to credit someone, but it's also very appreciated by the original creator.
And also think about it this way, like if you used a technique that you saw from someone and you copied it exactly and then didn't give them credit, so someone thought it was your own, and then someone asked you to make them something in that style, and then you're like, wait, I can't actually do this, all I was doing was copying someone else's, then you know that you don't really truly know this and you were just using the other person's work as reference.
Yeah. So now, like, I know a lot of you have taken our classes and have learned from us, and I don't want you to be afraid, like, oh, they taught me this, like, now I can never post anything about bounce lettering without crediting us. Like, that's not true. I mean, if you are, like, tracing the bounce lettering examples in our course, then, like,
It would be nice.
It would, yeah, we'd prefer that you credit us. But if, like, after you've taken the course and you've got it down, then you go and create your own bounce lettering, like, you do not have to credit us all the time. Same with, like, our brush lettering course. Now if someone, like, asks you, like, hey, like, can you teach me this? We'd prefer that you send them to our class rather than just, like...
Yeah, so here's an example that we've seen other people do where they take, like, a Skillshare class or something, and then they create their own YouTube video teaching the exact same technique that they learned. They say, oh, I learned this from this person's Skillshare class, so technically they're giving credit, but if they're just, like, teaching exactly what they learned in this class and giving it away for free, even though this other person has a paid course on it, like, I'm giving credit, but that's not right to do that.
Yeah, that's just stealing. So if you, that's a good example.
Yeah,
because we've seen that, like, twice in the past week of someone saying, like, oh, I learned this on Skillshare, let me put up a free YouTube video, and then teaching it the exact same way, which is just not very nice to do, but it's also, I don't think it's legal. Okay, what else? So a good test to see if you need a credit is if you can recreate a piece, or if you can create something without having to refer to someone else's work. So it's great to draw inspiration from lots of different sources. I think that's another key point. If you're always, like, looking at one person's work and only looking at their work and being inspired by only their work, then you're probably copying them. And even if it takes you a long time to create something, but it's still the same as their design, like, that's still copying. I know if you spend a lot of time on something, it feels like you've created it, but if it, at the end of the day, it's just, like, tracing.
Yeah, like, if you recreated a famous,
like,
painting,
Mona Lisa, like, it's still not yours. So it's
like, it's still impressive that you were able to do it, but you should still give credit.
Yeah. And another thing about that is you don't have to post everything that you make online, especially if it is as a learning tool. Like, I'm copying the Mona Lisa so I can learn how to paint. Like, you don't have... Like, that one's pretty obvious because everyone knows who the original creator is, but imagine if we didn't and, like, someone thought that that was your amazing original piece.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about really, like, selling work that you've copied that is, like, hugely bad. But still posting on Instagram, it doesn't matter if you're not selling it.
Yeah, so other reasons that it doesn't matter. So if you copy someone else and you post it on Instagram, but you think to yourself, oh, I only have 5 followers, it doesn't matter. You still have to give credit.
Let's see. Even if your account is private, you should still give credit, just because you might have a follower. Even if your account is private, someone who's following you might see it and then try to recreate it, and then it kind of spirals out of control from there. What else? Yeah, if the content was free somewhere, so whether it was in a paid course, like a Skillshare class, or free somewhere, like on YouTube or in a Facebook group, it's still best practice if you're actually using that resource to create your piece. It's still best practice to give credit.
I think if you're inspired by or trying to recreate, it's good manners to tag and mention them in a comment. If I'm ever good enough to be copied, you are. I'd be flattered and would be grateful for the possible traffic. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about some of those things.
Actually, right now. So we have a whole section listed out of just talking between the two of us, like, why, like, okay, besides it being, like, the right thing to do, why else is crediting important? So first of all, it just totally respects the time of the original artist. Like, Jordan casually mentioned before that she spent a lot of time doing that no-lift magic schools thing, but she seriously spent, like, probably 4 hours per letter, and there's 26 letters.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of time for her to have put into that, and, like, really generous that she put it for free on YouTube. And so, like, it's just kind of respectful if I don't know, like, if you were to write out the whole alphabet exactly how she did and someone said, like, oh, that looks really nice, then it would be nice if you said, like, oh, I learned it from this person if you want to learn it too. But yeah, that's kind of where it gets gray, because
and, like, I don't want you to be afraid or, like, not post something that you did that was inspired by someone else. It's just like, after she spent so much time on it, like, if she sees someone else not give credit, then it's just kind of like, oh, well, okay. The other thing I wanted to say is crediting someone does not take away from your talent. In fact, I think I'm always, like, respect the person even more that they've taken the time to give credit. I don't think, like, oh, wow, like, they couldn't think of this themselves, they had to copy someone, like, why did they even post it? I think, like, wow, they did a really good job, and I'm proud of them for giving credit, so don't be afraid. Yeah, like, actually, Merdula just posted something recently where she wrote calligrapher and had all these amazing flourishes, and she typed in the caption, like, I wouldn't have been able to do this without the flourishing class, so I was like, oh, she gave credit, but then I also commented back and said, like, yeah, the class helped, but it was also like, I'm really proud of you for your dedication and your practice, because like just because you take a class doesn't mean you'll automatically be able to do it. Like, you're very talented and able to do this, so I'm really proud of you for doing it, and thank you for giving credit.
Yeah, and the point of this video is not to say that you guys always have to credit us. We're just using our things as examples so that we aren't calling people out.
Yeah, or like hurting someone's feelings.
Yeah. Okay, so why else is crediting important? Okay, well, besides the obvious of if you're stealing someone's ideas, but you could also be stealing possible opportunities from someone. So like, I know a lot of like photographers and like painters are using online, like their blog and Instagram as kind of a portfolio to attract clients. And so if you take their work and then rip off what they've done, then maybe if a client sees like a lot of other people doing this style without ever giving that person permission, they might not want to hire that person because they think maybe that person was copying the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
The next reason that we were just talking about is growing friendships. So Kathy just said, like, if someone ever copied her or was inspired by her and tagged her and said, like, look at this cool thing Kathy made and I was inspired by it and I tried it out and here's my version of it, Kathy would be flattered and say, oh my gosh, you liked my thing enough to try it, and like probably have a really good relationship with that person and maybe turn into a friendship. And so it also kind of like Jillian said before, a rising tide lifts all boats. Like, giving credit to other people just raises everyone up.
Yeah, it doesn't take away from you. It's just, yeah. I mean, you should never tag someone expecting that they'll give you a shout out, but if, for example, like someone did like a technique and you tag them and said, hey, I tried this out, then maybe they'll like share your picture on their Instagram story and give you some traffic. So that's kind of like the whole building each other up thing, which don't like do that just because you're expecting that someone's going to share your work, because sometimes you can tell if like someone tags us a million times, like I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on the situation. Like for our lettering challenges, like we love seeing all the work, but if it's just some random person who tags you, like expecting that you're going to share their picture on your story because you have a lot of followers, then that's a little different.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's another gray area.
Okay, so to summarize, how should we summarize this?
So we wanted to bring this up because we know this is an important topic. I think at the end of the day, it's just remembering to be a kind human, regardless of if you feel like you're being copied or if you want to use someone else's work as inspiration. It's always just best practice to kind of cool down, like think for a second, and just give people the benefit of the doubt if you see this happening, and just remember that it's the right thing to do, to give credit and just to lift everyone else up. Yeah. So we found a lot of really great blog posts on this topic as well that we're going to share probably in the caption of this post when we finish this video, and we strongly encourage you to take a look at some of them. They bring up some interesting points, and I think just being aware of this, and like we said at the beginning, like this isn't a huge problem in this group. Most of the time we see you guys crediting, even if you're using each other's, like I think I've seen in some of the daily lettering challenges, someone trying a technique and someone else saying like, hey, I want to try this, and then they tag each other, which I love seeing. So most of the time it's not a problem. We just wanted to bring it up because it is an important issue.
Yeah.
Alright guys, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.